Hey, Sony, just throwing this idea out there. Can we get Austin Rogers, former contestant on Jeopardy, to host Jeopardy, to guest host it for at least a little while? Please and thank you. I give you my thoughts and my reasons as to why former contestant Austin Rogers should host Jeopardy, or at least guest host Jeopardy, coming up next. Alright, yes. I give you my reasons as to why I think former Jeopardy contestant Austin Rogers should host the show, should guest host the show. I should preface that. Should guest host Jeopardy for a little while. Before we get into that main event, let me introduce myself. My name is Leigh Dickey, comedian, actor, producer, reviewer, and a man who is so knowledgeable about Jeopardy that I probably would tank as a contestant. But I give you my reasons as to why Austin Rogers, former contestant on Jeopardy, should guest host it at least for a little while. If this is your first time here, please do subscribe to Leigh Dickey TV on YouTube. Visit my official website, leightdickey.com. Subscribe and follow the fun on social media at Leigh T. Dickey on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to both my podcasts, the Beats and Speaks podcast and Yo Nostalgia on your favorite podcast app and player of choice. Please do comment, like, share, subscribe. Leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and a review if you would, please and thank you, and on your favorite podcast app and player of choice. Alright, now that all the housekeeping is out of the way and you know where to find me and all the content that I produce here on the Leigh Dickey TV YouTube channel and my official website, leightdickey.com, let's get into my reasons why I think former contestant Austin Rogers should guest host Jeopardy for a little while, coming up right here and right now. Austin Rogers is not Ken Jennings. He's not James Holzhauer. He doesn't have to be, right? He's a former contestant. He had a 13-game winning streak, and he won about $413,000. Now, like I said, he's not Ken Jennings, who had a guest hosting stint back in January for a couple of weeks, right? He's not Ken Jennings, and he's not James Holzhauer, who gave Ken Jennings a run for his money in terms of the winningest contestant in Jeopardy history. But he doesn't have to be, okay? And what I think Austin Rogers brings to the table, granted, okay, it's $413,000. It's nowhere near the amount of money and the amount of winnings that James Holzhauer had, or Ken Jennings, or anybody else that's like up in the in the upper echelon of, say, the winningest contestants in Jeopardy history. What Austin Rogers, in my opinion, brings to the Jeopardy game, or the Jeopardy sort of circle of things himself, is personality. He has such a personality. Now, I am going back and watching episodes of Jeopardy thanks to Netflix, because there are various collections on Netflix, at least Netflix in Canada. They may be available in other regions, so if you want to go back and watch his episodes, I'm not through all 12 or 13 of them, so I have to watch probably the last 3 or 4. But he is such a personality. Yeah, he has such a personality. He's a bartender from New York, and he, even Alex Trebek himself admitted on air that he was a fan of Austin Rogers' personality. And like every episode I've watched of his thus far, because I think he kicks off his episodes, at least on Netflix, they start very early in collection 26. So that's probably the first collection that's available. I think they start with episode, like, collection 26, episode 2 or 3, or they may even kick off collection 26 of Jeopardy on Netflix, at least in Canada. So if you want to go see what he's like as a contestant and see his sense of humor and what I think he could bring to the hosting role, if they do give him a chance to guest host, then I'm just going to say it, you're welcome, because he is super funny. He's got such a personality. He's knowledgeable when it comes to various subjects. And, like I said, it wasn't the longest winning streak, like 13 games, $413,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. But he was so funny. Like every intro, you'd have Johnny Gilbert introduce his challengers, and then you get to our returning champion, a bartender from New York City, whose however many day cash winnings total however much money, and he'd always be doing something. There was, he was popping the cork on a bottle. Granted, he's miming. He's popping the cork on a bottle of beer, maybe a bottle of wine. He's, pulling his cell phone out of his jacket pocket and pretending like to be talking on it. And he's sort of like just miming to the camera. He's got such a personality, and it's so refreshing. He's funny. He's knowledgeable. And he'll just crack you up. He'll make you laugh. And to be honest, that's why I think he should, at the very least, get a shot at guest hosting Jeopardy. Now, nobody's going to replace Alex Trebek. Now, if you don't know, Alex Trebek passed away in November, and Jeopardy, the executive producers at Sony and all the other staff at Jeopardy are trying to figure out who are we going to get to take the host mantle now that Alex Trebek is no longer here. Those are big shoes to fill, okay? Because Alex Trebek had the host role on Jeopardy. He was an institution, had the host role on Jeopardy from, I think, 1984 up until passing away in 2020. His episodes, I think, aired up until the first week, like the end of the first week of January, because Ken Jennings, his 2-week run as guest host kicked off, I think, January 11th, if I'm not mistaken. So, you've had Ken Jennings, Katie Couric, Mike Richards, who's the executive producer of the show and the former executive producer of both Let's Make a Deal and The Price is Right, and a man who's had, like, hosting experience. I think I read somewhere where Mike Richards was in the running to replace Bob Barker when Bob retired from The Price is Right after 35 years and 50 years in television overall, because he did have that, like, 15-year stint or something like it. It was like 15 years on Truth or Consequences, which ended in 1975, and then, The Price is Right for 35 years. But from something I read somewhere, I heard where Mike Richards, who was the executive producer of The Price is Right and Let's Make a Deal, was in the running to replace Bob Barker. But of course, they went with Drew Carey, and Drew's still the host of The Price is Right to this day. So Mike Richards hosted the show, and Katie Couric, Dr. Oz is currently in a guest hosting role right now. Like, this is his 2-week run. I read where Aaron Rodgers was penciled in to guest host for a couple of weeks. Mayim Bialik, which I'm actually really looking forward to. I'm really looking forward to see Mayim Bialik take the hosting mantle for a couple of weeks. But I think Austin Rogers, who's a former contestant, he's got the personality, he's very knowledgeable, he's funny, and I think he would fit right in with the podium there, the lectern that Alex Trebek made famous. That's just my opinion. I mean, you've got Johnny Gilbert, who's still, kick ass as the announcer. He's still kicking ass as the announcer. And to be honest, like, what happens if Johnny goes? Like, who gets the announcer's role? But I mean, Mike Richards hosted, Katie Couric, Mayim Bialik is slated to guest host, Aaron Rodgers, Mehmet Oz, like I said, Dr. Oz is currently the guest host. I think his episodes started airing, when you guys hear and see this, it'll be Friday. So I think his first week started Monday. So I'm actually filming this on Monday. So I think today was his first episode that aired. So there's a 2-week run for Dr. Oz. And, I think we should slide former contestant Austin Rogers in there because he's funny, knowledgeable, and I think, not unlike Ken Jennings, who, you get it from the contestant side because he had, like, Ken Jennings himself had a massive, 74-game streak, or like a 74-game win streak, where he amassed like $4.5 million or something like that, which is unheard of. But like, why not? You got Ken Jennings in there, like, the people can relate to him because he's sort of like the everyman's man. But I think if you brought Austin Rogers back into the fold to guest host, I think he's got the personality and the sense of humor, and he's very knowledgeable, and I think he would do really, really well. So this is my plea to Mike Richards, who's the executive producer of Jeopardy, and anybody else at Sony Pictures Television. Can we get Austin Rogers to guest host, at least for a couple of weeks? Please and thank you. From Leigh Dickey, a fan up here in Canada, and probably on behalf of like the many fans around, the many millions upon millions of fans around the world. I'd love to see Austin Rogers come back into the fold as a guest host for Jeopardy, and then that's just my plea to Mike Richards. And to be honest with you, I would love to guest host Jeopardy for a couple weeks if they wanted to fly me down and set me up. I mean, I'd do a 2-week stint, no problem. But I think, Austin Rogers, he's a former contestant, would do so well in the hosting role that, can we just get him on for a couple weeks just to see how he does? Give him a 2-week audition. I mean, that would be fine. You're giving everybody else these 2-week auditions. And then I think, to not have him come back as a guest host, I don't want to call it a tragedy, or I don't want to call it a missed opportunity, but I think really it is a missed opportunity to not have somebody like Austin Rogers back into the fold as a guest host at the very least, given that, the executive producers and the staff and everybody in the production of Jeopardy need to find a permanent host to, and I hate to even say this, to replace Alex Trebek, which is difficult enough in itself because, I mean, it's Alex Trebek. Nobody's going to replace the man, but you need somebody. I mean, I'm throwing my own name into the hat if anybody from Jeopardy and Sony can see this. But I think let's bring back Austin Rogers because he's funny, knowledgeable, and he would, again, a lot like Ken Jennings, give the contestants maybe even a little semblance of, hey, I know what it's like because I've been there, right? He can relate to them. And I think that would just be super cool to see someone like Austin Rogers back in the fold, if for nothing else, just a 2-week sort of guest host audition stint. But those are my reasons as to why, and my thoughts on why Austin Rogers, a former Jeopardy contestant, should at least guest host Jeopardy for a little while. But this wraps up another episode. My name is Leigh Dickey. Thank you for watching. Please comment, like, share, subscribe. Follow the fun on social media at Leigh T. Dickey on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe here to the Leigh Dickey TV YouTube channel, and subscribe to both my podcasts, the Beats and Speaks podcast and Yo Nostalgia. Please do leave us a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app and player of choice. All right. Thanks for tuning in. I've been Leigh Dickey. This wraps it up. Take care, and we'll talk to you later. Peace.